Hey guys, what's up? Sandu here. So today I'll be testing a hybrid headphone amplifier that combines some of that tube sweetness and warmth with the solid state precision, speed and impact. So this one is called LittleDot MKIII Special Edition. I've had a little bit of history with this brand a long time ago, and if you'd like to learn a little bit more, please check out my written review that you can find below. I'll be simply calling it LD3 from now on. It goes for a little bit below 500 bucks and it's considered a mid-range model in their lineup. Full disclosure first, I received this one directly from LittleDot USA. Thank you, Jan, for that. But you have my word that this will be an honest and unbiased review, so let's get it started. LD3 is having a metal body, it's painted with a glossy black paint. The front panel is having a raw aluminum look and the tube guards are having golden accents. Wife acceptance factor is quite low in this one and I wish it looked less flashy on the outside. Other than the paint, the device itself is pretty heavy. At about 3 kilos, it looks pretty serious on the table, but thankfully is not that huge in an office desktop setup. It is about the same size with mid-level DACs, so it could make a good partnership with something like a topping DX7 Pro or D90. LittleDot put some rubber feet underneath this one, which are longer compared to the ones I've seen on solid-state amplifiers, meaning that heat dissipation shouldn't be a big problem. Just in case you are wondering, you cannot remove the tube guards, but maybe it's for the best if you are listening to multiple headphones in a day as I do. Since this is an old-school headphone amplifier without additional functionalities, bells and whistles, you are basically limited to some headphone outputs and some analog inputs. On its front plate you will find a 1/4 inch headphone jack, another 4-pin XLR balanced headphone output, a huge volume knob, and a small LED on the far right that will show its working status. On the back you can find an RCA input, an XLR balanced input, an AC inlet and an on-off switch. I wish it had a power button on the front panel for convenience, but it is okay as it is. Be warned that LD3 is not using an universal power supply, so it is either a 220 volt or a 110 volt unit. Check the voltage on the sticker below the AC inlet before powering it on for the first time. As for the tech inside this unit, LD3 is a fully balanced, fully symmetrical tube input stage with a high current, discrete transistor-based output stage. Yeah, that long. No cutting corners in here, no op-amps or capacitors in the signal path for the purest possible signal. It is a hybrid headphone amplifier, meaning that it will still offer some of that tube warmth and sweetness, but also a lot of speed and impact a transistor-based amplifier should provide. It uses an Alps 27 volume pot, which is known to be super reliable, but also precise at low volume positions. There are a few Philips and Wima capacitors for power filtering and coupling. As for the tubes, it is using two 6N11 double triodes, but there are plenty of substitutes for this as 6922, ECC88, 6DJ8, 7308 and E188CC. There are tons of current production tubes for this amp, but if you are chasing for more emotion in your music, then I strongly recommend some older, new old stock military grade tubes from the likes of Telefunken, Mullard, Sylvania, Philips and Western Electric. As for the power output, it will offer some 2.5 watts in 32 ohms and 0.8 watts in 300 ohms, which should be plenty for low sensitivity and high current headphones as planar magnetics, but also for high impedance and high voltage headphones as dynamics. Some serious power underneath that hood, so it should move and control those drivers pretty easily, but let's check out if that is really the case. In terms of sound performance and considering all the caps that it has inside, this transformer on top, these brand new tubes and that powerful output stage that it has inside, it was clear to me that few days will be needed to unleash its fullest potential, so a little bit of burn-in will be needed. But my curiosity level couldn't hold me still for too much, so I started listening right away after unpacking it. And the first thing that struck me is that how powerful it felt with these notorious headphones that you see on the right, so Odyssey LCD4 and Hi-Fi Area, At about half the volume it was already too loud with both of them, so obviously a lot of power was left on tap. It felt considerably more powerful compared to my own benchmark HPE4 and about on the same level with the Flux Lab Acoustics FA10. That didn't make sense to me at all because that one is considerably more powerful, so 16 watts versus 2.5. So it didn't make sense to me, and I started shooting back and forth few emails with LittleDot, and they told me back that this is a full Class A amplifier, so it is not switching to Class AB how other amplifiers are doing. And that is precisely why it felt so powerful, so punchy and so agile and so engaging sounding. So its case is considerably hotter at the touch compared to other tube amps that I've tried, even compared to Xduo TA10, TA30. That is obvious, that is the first sign that it works in Class A, offering a lot of constant power but a lot of heat dissipation in the process as well. The second thing that I have observed is that there is a little bit of itching up top that is making me uncomfortable long term. So the treble can be considered a bit bright with all my planar headphones, but also with the dynamic headphones. Mid-range didn't grab my soul so much how it usually happens with tube-based amplifiers. And honestly, not the perfect first impression. It was a little bit underwhelming, but I knew that a longer period of time will be needed before it will start singing beautifully. So I left it for 2 days for a little bit of burn-in. It just passed 50 hours of playback time, so I returned back to my office. I just finished my morning coffee, and I started listening to the same songs that I did 2 days ago. So when Coltrane Sleeping on the Blacktop started singing, started playing, it was clear to me that I'm not experiencing the same amplifier, the same shy sounding amplifier that I did 2 days ago. So especially the drum kick was considerably more visceral and more impactful sounding. It was kicking harder. But the biggest improvement I've heard when he started clapping his hands, because that was less tiresome, less bright sounding somehow. When that cowboy started singing, I felt his voice going lower in the tonality. It felt more masculine sounding. That mid-range was simply smoother sounding and deeper sounding too. Vocal cords vibrated just a microsecond longer, and it was decaying just simply naturally. So dynamics also felt on a much higher level, and that much sought after mid-range presence simply came back in full force. So I was simply listening to a different amplifier, and the only thing that I wanted to tame and domesticate was the treble presence, especially in the 5 to 7 kilohertz area, where it was simply hotter sounding in there. But I have the premonition that the stock tubes are causing this effect, and maybe a better Newell stock tubes will solve this issue. There is a chance that LD3 could sound even better than that past 50 hours of burn-in, but at this time I wanted just a glass of whiskey and more music to be added to my playlist. In terms of tonality, I didn't expect it to sound so alive and ass-kicking, so the speed that was coming from this unit was something else compared to my old tube amplifiers that I've tried up to this point. So since a big part of my audiophile diet is still a lot of rock and electronica music and all its subgenres, I fired some grunge music, some progressive, some funk, some drum and bass music that I'm very familiar with. This little fella was not really far off tonality-wise with the solid-state amplifiers that were sitting near it on the table, with just a slight increase in terms of layering, soundstage airiness and mid-range presence. I'm still a little bit shocked how well it driven those Odyssey LCD4 and Hi-Fi Man area, and considering that this is a hybrid amplifier. And in all honesty, this one felt having a neutral and linear tonality with just a slight increase in terms of mid-range and treble presence. Bass was thumping hard and was hitting my eardrums exactly as I wanted, and it proved that it can keep up with faster-paced music no problem. So be it electronica, rock or metal, it was always nimble sounding, fast sounding, There was a little bit of tube bloom as well, but not a lot of it. But it was more than enough to improve the texture of all the acoustic instruments and also the weight of the voices too. As for the power output, this will be a shorter chapter, so to speak, as on the 12 o'clock position it was driving those Odyssey LCD4 like it was nothing, and that was a very pleasing experience. And mind you, this is all was on the low, on the stock gain position. It might look small and cute on the table, but the control and the power output that comes out of this thing is quite impressive. So I would personally never change those jumpers for the high gain, and considering that I want to have that total harmonic distortion and noise always in check and as low as possible, I would leave it at the low gain position. Hi-Fi area was driven at about 11 o'clock position, and those huge RZH Phobos at 10 o'clock position, and Kennerton Magni as well. It was simply a child's play for this amplifier, and that was pretty amazing to experience. In terms of background noise, the easiest way to spot it is to use the most sensitive headphones that you have at your disposal, or maybe something like this, so very sensitive IEMs. And I will say it from the start that all my past experiences with tube amplifiers were not that great when it comes to IEM pairings. It so happens that tube amplifiers, be it all tube or hybrid designs, are not the best when it comes to total harmonic distortion and noise levels. So in each of them didn't really work with sensitive IEMs. I was very surprised when I connected this FiO FI7 and later on FiO FI9 to this one. FI9 are having 16 ohms and 130 decibels per 1 milliwatt of power. And at my comfortable listening level, there was a very faint, barely audible noise. For the record, amplifiers like Xduo TA10, TA30, Audio GD D28, Barson Playmate and Barson Conductor Free Reference were much worse than this in terms of IEM pairings, and mind you, some of those are much more expensive than this one. So I'm not sure what Mambo Jumbo, what Ritual Dance's LittleDot team did with this one, but this one can be considered dead silent with my portable headphones, with my desktop headphones, and very good, almost excellent with my IEMs. So I continued listening to some live records, and that dark background and that cleanness carried over to my desktop headphones, which was really nice to experience. In terms of frequency response, I will first start with the bass. I felt it really deep reaching, really controlled, snappy and punchy sounding. It actually reminds me quite a lot more about solid state amplifiers and less about tube amplifiers. And I'm pretty sure that this all discrete and transistor based output stage actually left its last words exactly in here in the bass. So I'm not spotting longer decays as it usually happens with tube amplifiers. This one is not having anything like that. I was actually surprised that it can keep up with faster tunes, with faster music like, I don't know, Infected Mushroom, The Prodigy, Chemical Brothers. Even the newest albums that increased the pace was no match for LittleDot Mark III. I was able to spot 20 Hz notes, and I'm glad to report that bass performance was rendered with flying colors. If you expect a 2B or a GUI or slow mid-range performance, then I'm going to disappoint you that I cannot spot anything like that in here. So I can't spot excessive blooming, I can't find a roll-off in the frequency extremes, and I think it sounds a lot more like a solid-state amplifier with just an increase in the stage size, depth, and if you are searching for that 2B sound, you cannot find it in here. On the other hand, it is neither dry sounding, so you can expect a really nice vocal performance. There is still a very big gap tonality-wise between male and female voices, so I think their pitch should be rendered pretty naturally. There is also a very small hint of sweet harmonics of naturalness, but if you would like to have a little more of that, simply exchange these drive tubes with something better and you will have a much nicer mid-range. I think that LittleDot US is offering some nicer tubes like Telefunken and Philips at an extra. Might be worth a shot if you would like to have more emotion and soul in your music. Treble was edgy and hard sounding at first, but 50 hours later I can't spot anything of that in here. Only very occasionally when I would listen to some brighter recording with the Hi-Fidelity area or with the RZH Phobos, which actually champs in this region, in the treble region, there would be a very small traces of brightness, but nothing to be worried about. I know the culprit as I have experienced cheap tubes, and I think that older new old stock tubes should completely solve this issue. Apart from that, I find the treble extended even past top octave. I don't hear any roll-offs, and it's sounding fast and decays in the same fashion. In terms of transient response, this one sounds considerably faster compared to an old tube design, and I think that it hits pretty hard too. So there are many factors at play here. First of all, it's Class A design, obviously, that powerful and transistor-based output stage, that is the second reason. And of course, this big transformer on top is also giving a helping hand too. So all of them combined giving me a really nice punch into my eardrums, exactly how I like it. Even the Quadra one with its 20 ohm impedance and these ones with 35 impedance sounded alive and really hard hitting. Actually, there isn't a single headphone in my stable that doesn't sound that way, lively and engaging on this particular amp. Even those tiny IEMs sounded really much bigger and harder slamming on this amplifier. As for the Soundstage, it sounds only by a hair wider and deeper compared to my own benchmark HPA4, and considerably bigger sounding compared to mid-range solid-state amplifiers that I've tried. I'm actually including the notorious Flux Lab Acoustics F810 in this list as well, as this little fella was simply pushing all those notes deeper into the mix. Now comparing this one to an old tube amplifier, it sounds only moderately wide. For example, that X-Duo T30 still sounded a little bit wider on all axes, and that was very apparent with live music. All in all, I find that having a medium to large soundstage size, and it is not definitely not closed-in sounding. Generally speaking, detail retrieval is not the strongest points of all tube-based amplifiers. It's more like their Achilles heel, if you ask me. But considering that this one also has a discrete output stage, I can't attribute the same words to this one. So when you have a slightly bigger soundstage than usual, automatically all those details are coming simply more naturally towards you, and I'm spotting them much easier too. So transparency is at a decent to high level, and I'm pretty sure that nicer double triodes will increase this one as well. You should also know that it left some stones unturned compared to, say, benchmark HPA4 or Sparkos Labs Aries. But in the same time, it was more transparent and clearer sounding compared to mid-range amplifiers like RZH Bacillus, Barson Fan, Barson Playmate, and Topping A50. As for the conclusion, I liked quite a lot more its sound performance compared to its plain looks and bright color palette. If you ever wanted to try a tube amplifier but could never abandon your solid-state amplifier and all its traits, I think that Mark III Special Edition is a very good starting point. It was a very powerful unit with all my headphones, a gentle giant with my IEMs, and also a very hard puncher too. And considering all those pros, all those positive aspects far outnumbered all the cons, I think that $495 seems like a very reasonable price to pay. So yeah, I'm recommending this unit, and I'll be keeping a close eye on LittleDot and all their doings. Okay guys, I hope you enjoyed my review. My full in-depth review is waiting on my website. In case you want to support the channel, please subscribe to it, and thank you for doing that. And as usual, listen to my music, be positive, and I'll see you next time. Cheers guys, bye bye.